Hello and welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. Today is Friday, July 6th, 2018. My name is Jason Lahar, coming to you from Long Beach, California. And today we are all celebrating the release of CanJS 4.3 and 5.0. We're going to talk about those today. It's been quite the ride getting here. It feels really good to get everything out the door, shipped. All the packages are released. The main can builds are all out. You can use them. We'll talk about all of those and give demos of what we've been doing. First, let's introduce everyone real quick. So I'm Chasen, and then we just had Austin join. Batovi, say hi, Austin.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, good to see you. And Sheriff is working with us too. Hey, Sheriff, good to see you.
Hello, hello everyone.
Hey, and then on our 5.0 full steam ahead team, we've got Matthew and Kevin and Justin. Say hi, guys.
What's up, party people? Hello.
And then working on Island, we've got Christopher. Hey, Christopher.
Hi.
Hey. So yeah, let's get into it. Justin, do you want to talk about CanJS 5.0?
Sure. First, I've got something to celebrate. This is a Pollyanna Summerly. It's a wheat ale with raspberries added, which is, if you're going to start drinking at 10:40 a.m.
That's the way to do it.
It's the way to do it. It really is. And the reason why I'm drinking is because we released CanJS 5.0, woohoo, and 4.3. Woohoo! So, Jason, were you going to touch on the 4.0, 4.3 features?
Yeah, I was going to talk about specifically the can component, rendering component instances, and can value. So that's what I was going to go over.
So what I want to do is talk about real quick the 4.3 and 5.0 features. Like what was released in the last 24 hours. If I can get my just scroll up. Anyways. So the big changes, we improved compatibility with Webpack, and this was done by Sheriff. If you're using Webpack, all of the development code that Steele was removing is now also removed by Webpack. So you'll get much faster CanJS performance when you're using Webpack. The thing that Chase is going to talk about is a lot of testing. We made it so that components can be programmatically instantiated. So you can define a component and then create it. And this makes testing and routing a lot easier. And Chasen's going to do that. And these are all the 4.3 features. So if you're on 4.0, you can get these with 0 changes. Of course, they're also already in 4.0. And I think those are the two biggest features. And there's a bunch of fixes and things like that outside that. Anything else I'm missing?
Those are the big things, and we added use strict to all of our modules too, which I think makes a little bit of a difference. But
oh yeah, Austin helped with that.
Yep.
Okay, so the big 5.0 features for people who are wanting to upgrade to that. So the reason why there's kind of two major features that landed to make 5.0. The first is can query logic, which is a replacement for can set, which makes CanJS, I think now, by far, CanJS has got to have the best real-time functionality of any major JavaScript library. I can't imagine somebody's built something better because we've invested so much time. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the other big thing we did is we made it so CanJS is tree shakeable, and the main can package exports something that is an ES module that provides named exports. So the way you use CanJS now is you import named exports from a can package. No longer do you have to have npm install 15 or maybe more than 15. Depending on what you're using, different packages, and know the name of every single one. Everything is now inside of can. That makes things a lot easier. And as long as you're using something like Steele 2.0 or Webpack that supports tree shaking, your you will not load everything in CanJS. You will load just what you need. So that change to use ES modules, now that they are supported in every single modern browser, supplies my favorite feature, which is that CanJS's kind of usability and how easy it is to just start a little application has gotten way easier. So in the new site, CanJS 5.0 site, perhaps my favorite thing is that to use CanJS now, this is the whole counter app right here. Right? I can just create an HTML page, use a custom element, and now use the native script module type to load. And this is our CDN hosted core build. This is a single file that exports all of CanJS's core. There's a minified version of this too. But if I just wanted to like play around and make a little tiny behavior for an otherwise static page, it is so easy, again, to do that in CanJS. Just import components and then define the custom elements that you want and their behavior. And that's it. And then this slight change to use ES modules that are native now percolated in other ways too even. The guides now and the technology overview guide, we made it so you can hit one of these run in your browser buttons. I'll do it on kind of a cooler one that's actually got some inline, some HTML plus JavaScript. So here, this is that exact same my counter. It's just written out so the view model is separated. Actually, let's get even a cooler example here. Here's a much bigger one that is making a to-do list component that lists all to-dos using the new REST model, which I will talk about. But the cool thing, it's just so cool to me that like I can just write up for people, hey, you want a to-do list that lists items on your page? Here, it's easy to run in your browser, right? So it just lists everything here. I can just write that up and share that code and just launch it for people so easy from CanJS's website. I think it's going to really enhance how easy it is for people to learn and pick up CanJS. With that, then I'll go circle back to the CanQuery logic stuff. So now we have these, instead of CanConnect, which people found, how do you say it, a little bit, there's a lot of boilerplate into setting up CanConnect connections. We've kind of circled back to something closer to the Can model of old, where CanJS comes now with 3 pre-configured model kind of mix-ins. We call them models. They mix into your observable types, and they add model behavior to them. So the base one is CanRest model. You just define your observable types, and you call REST model on it, and that will add all of the get list, get, save, destroy, is saving, is destroying, is new methods that you know and love, and dispatch the created, updated, and destroyed events. But it does not use query logic. So this is a really good one to use. This is a very easy one to start. It's like the Can model of old. You just have a RESTful connection. You want something to work. Okay, well, this is all you need to do now, is import REST model and just add it to your model type and your model list type. And then when you want real time, and I should say that real time is not the same thing as, you don't need a real-time connection to make real-time REST model useful. A better name for this would be automatic list management. This is what does use CanQuery logic to make sure that when items are created, destroyed, or changed, that lists are automatically updated. This means so you don't have to listen to like, oh, was an item created, add it to my list. This does that for you. But again, it's the same thing. You can just define your types and then create your to-do connection, and this mixes in everything. And then we have the kitchen sink Can supermodel, which adds all of the local storage, reference types, like pretty much everything inside Can Connect. So this is actually going to be put in ecosystem. This was a documentation bug that will be fixed in 5.01. But the nice, I mean, to me, what I love about 5.0 is we're getting closer, kind of coming back to the basics. We're making this very relatively lightweight framework, especially for what you get, that provides, I think, everything you need to make a relatively sophisticated application. It's got real, live updates and two-way bindings and all of that stuff for HTML. It's got basic routing, and it's got now, with especially canned REST model, basic REST connections. So, and it's all supplied through this pretty easy to use, ES module way of importing things. So that's 5.0. Hooray!
Woo-hoo.
Pretty pumped about it.
There's also the changes to can route push state, but I can talk about that when I do my demo.
Do you want to talk about that now?
Let's talk about that now.
All right.
Now is as good of a time as any. Okay. That's a great segue, Jason. I'm impressed.
You just set it up for me, and then
The most with the most.
All right. Good timing. All right. So one thing Justin did talk about in 5.0 is how we do make sure I turn notifications off. How we do can route push state. So one of the big challenges of 5.0, because we have tree shaking now, is we needed a way so that side effectual modules would not be tree shaking. We want to make it so that if you did, like, for example, stash bindings is not something that you actually use. It just by importing in the past, just by importing can stash bindings, it kind of sets itself up, and it actually still does now. But we need to make it possible so that there's a way in your code that so that you can. The way you actually do that is with can do callbacks. You can say view callbacks attrs stash bindings, because all can stash bindings is a collection of can do callbacks. So this is actually a new feature in 5.0 as well, as can do callbacks has the attrs method to take multiple attrs, an object of attrs. So anyways, we need to make it possible to do this, basically, because this prevents stash bindings from being tree shaking, because you actually are using it to set stuff up. To the other side of that is what happens when you have a module that what happens when you don't have actually that. So this takes care of when you do have tree shaking, but what happens to side effectual modules when you don't have tree shaking? So when you don't have tree shaking, for example, the MJS build does not get tree shaken. It's a collection of everything. What happens to side effectual modules then? Well, their side effects are always going to apply. You're never going to be able to make them not be applied. And that was the case with can route push state. Am I making sense so far, people? Others? No?
Basically, one way to maybe summarize it would be, there's a difficulty in supporting both tree shaking
and not tree shaking,
and bundles that are not like basically module loaders that are going to tree shake and module loaders that are not going to tree shake.
Yeah,
and we have to make things work in both scenarios. You have
to fix both sides of that. So like I just showed with can do callbacks, that fixes the case where you do have tree shaking, because you wanted that not to be tree shaking. But when you don't have tree shaking, you need to be able to make it so that stuff doesn't automatically get applied. And that's the case with can route push state. So anyways, a little demo here, just kind of like Justin was showing. I think probably all of our demos going forward are going to look a lot like this, importing from unpackage. I think in our docs, we just have can this works. I'm personally going to start using the @5, just that way when 6.0 comes out, I don't want to accidentally get that. I don't want to break my demos because there's a breaking change. So you can do it this way to import everything. Like I said, here I have a page. Very simple. We got an automatic component, a view model. To do routing, so one of the things we've been talking about recently is how to do routing with auto-mounted components because it kind of changes things a little bit. And it makes it so you want to be able to set up your, you might want to be able to set up your routing within your component. And another problem people have had is sometimes they have like an application view model where some properties belong in the URL and some properties don't belong in the URL. And in order to make that work, you have to mark the ones that you don't want in your URL as serialized false. And that's kind of a weird thing to do. It's not obvious. A lot of times, you know, that you don't notice it at first, and later you see that it's actually a bug. So we've been thinking a lot about how to do routing. And I think this is something that we're going to continue to do. And hopefully in 6.0, we have like a really great routing story. But something you can already do, even in CanJS 4 or CanJS 3 for that matter, is create a separate view model just for your URL. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create a URL view. Well, I'm going to call it route view model. And that's going to be a defined map. Route view model. And it's going to have one property, which is called page, and that's a string. And my component is
string in quotes.
I don't think you do. I think this works. Maybe by accident, but I'm pretty sure it works. So let's find out. Then I'm going to connect my component view model is going to have a route property, which is that view model. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to put all my route stuff in this view model. That way, if this needs to have, like, I don't know, a count or something that I don't want in my URL, I can put all that here, and it's not going to show up in the URL. Cool. So at this point, I refresh the page. Nothing happens. This should be route.page, actually. It should be route.page because it's a route property. View model has an init method. This is going back to something I was talking about before, is with auto-mounted components, it kind of makes sense to do your initialization inside of your component. So I'm going to set up my routing here. Before I do that, I'm just going to set a property on the window to be this particular view model so I can play around with it. But what I would do here with can route, and this works again, this is can route, this works in CanJS 4, route.register, give it a routing role. I'm going to give it a default of home as my home page. And then call route.start, and I believe this is, oops, I gotta do this. I need to set the route.data property, which is going to be a new instance of this. But I also want it to be my route property on this view model. So let's say route.data equals this.route is equal to new route view model. By doing that, I refresh the page and it says home, and you see that the URL has changed. Again, all this works in CanJS 4. If I look at the location.hash, I can manipulate that. I can say cart, and it will change it to cart, and that reflects in here as well. And if I refresh the page, it still says cart.
Can you do VM type of VM dot page?
You're wondering about that, huh? Actually, I think, hold on, let me show you again. It's an object, yeah. Actually, I think if we just start from scratch here. VM.route.page. Yeah, it's the string home. It's the string object home.
Yeah, it's because it's going through the string constructor. It's doing new string.
Yeah.
I'm converting to like the string constructor.
And if I change it, does it still say that? Yeah, okay.
If you want to get crazy, assign the can new symbol to a function. Assign the strings can new symbol to a function that just returns whatever's past it, and then you can put string like you had it.
Let's not do that because that'll take me a while, and I don't want to take everyone's time. But yeah, that's kind of a fun thing. Anyways, back to the routing. So this works fine for hash routing. So in the past, you would just import can route push state, and it would enable push state routing. We want to make it so that we didn't want that side effect to automatically happen. So there's now a can route push state 5.0, and the main can package exports a route push state constructor function. And just like I said, just importing that doesn't actually change anything. A refresh, if I change it to sports or something, and you see that it's still using hash change. So in order to enable push state routing, I need to call, so just the same way that route has a data property, which is the view model, we also have a URL data property, which is the URL observable. So in our case, it's going to be route push state. So if I do that, I start from scratch. The page is home, that's default. Now if I change the page to be sports, you can see we get push state routing with pretty URLs. And that just changes it flex automatically. I can't refresh this because I'm using just a plain ACP server and it wouldn't work. But you can see how easy it is to enable. You just basically add this. Whereas before you just imported it, now you need to add this. So the last thing is that, as you can see, if I just comment this out, I'm going to get hash-based routing. So there's also a route hash, which works exactly the same way as route push state. You just call that constructor as well, and you get hash routing. So you don't need to use this because this is the default, but just know that under the hood, CanRoute is setting this up.
And there's a new mock.
There's a new mock as well, which I don't think we put in ecosystem yet.
Oh, not yet?
Yeah, we need to. But there's a mock where you could use it for testing. So you just do route mock. And if you want to do some testing on stuff, but you don't actually want to, mess with the URL like inside your test, you can use the route mock. That's what CanRoute does internally to do its own testing. It uses the mock route. So that's pretty much it. We're still thinking about this. Like I said, I think maybe in 6.0, hopefully we have an even better story. But it's kind of the direction we're moving. Probably in 6.0, you'll need to use the route hash or the route push state, maybe. I don't know. But this is how it works now in CanJS 5.0. So that's push state routing.
Sweet. Thank you, Matthew. Did you have anything else you wanted to demo, or all route stuff?
No, just the route. Yeah, I think it's really cool.
You say just the route, but it's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, there's more here. There's also, just like I said, a lot of this you can do. Obviously, the URL data parts, that's new, but all this kind of setup you can do in 4.0 apps.
I think there's some possible really cool testing setup for testing, like given a URL, which component is being rendered. I mean, we'll probably see a little bit more of this when Chasen talks about how you can create components, instantiate them, but with mock URL, to be able to just be like, all right, I've got an application view model. I'm going to make sure it gets the mock hash, essentially the mock URL, and then I can just start setting URLs and then see which components should be rendered without actually having to render them. That to me seems like really, really useful testing layer of just being like that, being able to actually test that logic between like my URL looks like this, maybe some other application view model state sessions looks like this. Which component gets rendered? That's a very tricky thing to test currently in CanJS. That'll be a lot better, I think, in 4.3 and beyond. Yeah.
And with that, let me go ahead and show off the stuff that we shipped in 4.3. Let me share my screen.
Cheers, Matthew. Good job.
Okay, cool. No. All right, so this proposal we had on a survey a few months ago, and it was one of the more popular proposals. And for this one, we wanted to improve routing to components and testing, something that we've been talking about for this whole stream. So one of the drivers was this. Previously, you would write like big switch statements or some other logic to be able to decide, like, am I going to show, which component am I going to show, and then what attributes am I going to pass to it, and stuff like that. Which, like Justin said, is really unmaintainable. It's hard to test this. It requires that you render a stash template, and just the logic is more difficult to follow and write and that sort of thing. So we wanted to make this better, and by being able to do something like what Bitballs does. So for a quick reference, this is what the current Bitballs did, where it used a helper to use can import, and then depending on what page you passed, it would import the right thing so that you'd have progressive loading, and then render the template. This is a mess to implement on your own. And for testing, the same thing applies. I don't have a good example, but the same thing applies with testing, where you would previously have to render a component with stash in order to get the component's elements and test it. So we wanted to improve all of these things by making it possible to create a new component instance by just calling new on the components constructor. So I want to dig into a little bit about how we made this possible. So first off is can value. So not directly related to component, but we'll get to that in a minute. So can value makes it possible to create new observables that are bound to another value. So in this example, we have a define map that has an inner property that is an object that has a key property that has a string inside of it, right? So we've got this define map, and then we can create a new observable that's bound to this value. So can value has a few different ways of binding. Let me look at the can value docs real quick.
It's like a new and improved version of can compute.
Yes. It doesn't replace 100% of the use cases, but it replaces most of them. So the big one that we're going to talk about is two-way binding with the bind method. So this creates an observable that is two-way bound to the define map. So when you change the observable, the define map changes. So here, like key observable.value, you set that value, and then the define maps value changes. And then you can read that value as well with .value. So there's a value getter and setter property on the observable that you can read and write to. For two-way binding, and then there's also from and to. So from creates a one-way binding from the object at the key path to the observable. So in this example, we can only get the value out of the define map. We can't set to it. And then to is the opposite, where we can only set the value on the define map, but we can't read the value from it. That's basically can value. There's a couple of other methods for creating an observable from a initial value, or in the, I should have just shown this, in the, it's not going to be indexed yet. In the simple case, show this real quick. So creating a new observable value from another value, and then you can get and set it. Or one of, I think, can compute's more popular uses was having a getter function that references observables inside it, and then having a new compute or having a new observable that's derived from the values of other observables. So that's it for can value. Any questions or comments before I move on to the can component stuff?
We'll have to add the resolve one eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of other use cases for a can compute that we want to cover in can value.
Isn't it? I mean, to me, I think, especially in the future, our plan is really going to be around can observe. That we'll have can observe object and can observe array, And maybe those will actually be just like directly on the can named export. So you can just import, you might want to alias it something, but like object or array from can. I think you probably want to alias it as something. I don't know.
Yeah, observable object and observable array or something.
Or observable array or something, yeah. But the, you know, to me, it's really cool. If you know, CanJS again, we're kind of like everything old is new again. You know, the old CanJS had can map. Well, it was called can observe and can observe list, and then can compute. And what I'd really like to get, I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have can object, can array, can value. Of course, those need to be all aliased as something else, but I don't know, it's cool if we can get back to, we're gonna have these proxy observables and this value that's for kind of single value observables. And that's what you get to, you know, that's your core observable stack.
Yeah.
That CanJS provides.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let me move on to the can component stuff. So in can component 4.2, part of the CanJS 4.3 release, we made it possible to create new component instances with new. So here's an example of where we have a hello world component. It has a view, and in creating new instances, this supports slots. It supports providing content, and it supports providing values for the view model. So we have a can slot in our view, a default content, and then we're rendering something from the view model. So we can create a new instance of that component just by calling new on the constructor function, providing it an object with a bunch of options. View model lets you provide values as the view model. So we're just providing an array for the items. And then the content, if you want to provide content to the view, just pass it a string and it'll be rendered with can stash. Templates, this is the same as like can template strings that you would typically have in the content anyways. So it's just an object with the keys as the names of the slots. And then again, just a stash string or a string that'll be rendered with stash. And then the last thing is the scope that the templates and the content are rendered with. So these are kind of like rendered, like this content is rendered with this scope, and then it's inserted into the view. So that gives us, these component instances have two properties. One is the element. So this would just be a fragment with the components and all, you know, the DOM rendered. And then the view model, which is a new instance of the components view model. What's cool about this is, so this makes testing really easy because now you don't have to render a component in a stash template. You can just create a new instance, and then you have the element to do, you know, whatever checks you want to. And you can also change the view model. So you have the view model instance, and you can manipulate it however you want to. And then that re-renders the element. That just works.
I do think there's a, like, is there a way to call connected callback, or do you have to manually just do like migrating instance dot view model dot connected callback?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think you would have to call, like migrating instance dot view model dot connected callback. I don't know if that plays well. If you call it on your own, I guess we don't really have to support calling it on your own and also having the element inserted into the DOM.
Yeah, this is an unresolved problem that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Like how to deal with when view models are created versus when the component is instantiated or inserted and connected callback is run. You know, this will be, I imagine, part of like the testing guide that gets written up.
Yeah.
The technology is there. It's like how to play with it the right way.
Yep.
Jason, can you provide an observable for the scope?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Oh, you mean for the scope?
Yeah.
It's whatever can component already supported. So I think yes. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, it doesn't get converted. It must get converted.
It gets created to, yeah, it gets converted into a new scope. So I'm assuming that.
Yeah, so you can pass
scope.add an existing scope.
Does it check if it already is of type scope, so you can create like your own crazy scope?
Yeah, if it's already a scope, it won't like convert it.
Can we export CanView scope as something?
You sure?
As scope?
Probably.
Okay.
Look it up. I have a question.
Yeah.
Mine's more of a a theoretical question. So does this mean, like, in theory, you could construct an entire application that only used components passed in like this way, right? So you could create a new component and you provide it kind of, I don't know, you didn't show that, but somebody did show it, where you can use like handlebar tags to insert a component into a template, right?
Yep.
So in that way, you could have templates that are just DOM elements and other components, but they don't actually use the component's tag name.
Correct. Yep.
So you could do that all the way down. So in theory, this is like not important, but you could have because one problem of, like, I guess Can component, but also like web components, is that there's a global registry of names. So in this way, you could avoid the name problem. You could have two components with the exact same name, and one component could use. Yeah. Anyways, it's kind of
no, you're right. Theoretically, we, like, right now we require a tag, but theoretically, we could drop that requirement and you can just, create new instances and never have to.
You still have to like create an element though. CanJS needs to be, like, components need to be mounted on an element, so we'd have to have like anonymous element or something. We'd have to create some element for it to sit on.
Yeah.
That's not hard though. Or you can have a default div or something.
Yeah.
That's why it's always been one of the, I mean, not huge advantage, but one of the advantages of React is that it's all just in JavaScript. So, two components, there's no global registry.
Yeah.
It kind of gives the same sort of thing.
Yeah. Cool. So I showed like passing in values as a view model, but you can also have observables passed in. So building on what we just learned about Can component and using Can value, you can use observables from Can value in the view model that you pass to a new component instance to have those bound to a different observable that's outside of the component. So to break down this example, let's say I have an app VM that's a defined map, and then I have a component defined and I create a new instance of that component. Well, one of the values that I can pass in is using Can value, and it's, in this case, with .bind, it's two-way bound to the app VM defined map that I have defined outside of the component. So this is saying on the app VM, I want a two-way bound observable to its association property, and then that's going to be bound to the component view model's subject property. So in this case, I create a new instance. I have that element in view model. I can change. I don't think I actually. So I showed that this, like, creating a new instance of component like this, is the same as doing this in Stash, where you're passing in a raw value for like this greeting property, and then a two-way binding for the subject property, assuming that this component is being rendered with AppVM as the current scope. Which means that you can change. Let me see if I get into an example. Yeah, kind of at the end, I got to an example where, like, if you change property on the components view model, then that'll update the elements, and then it'll re-render the elements, and then it'll also update the app VM. And then same thing, if I change the app VM, that would re-render the components element and update its view model.
Did you write the blow your mind, or did I? I feel like that's more my language.
It is more your language. I took a cue out of, or I took a page out of your book and wrote that.
Nice.
Because I think it's really cool. Cool. Any questions about tying a can value and can component together? Yep, cool. And then the last thing, which Matthew referenced earlier, is you can use the unescape tag or the triple curlies to render a component instance in a stash template. So in this example isn't as good, but if you have a new component instance, you can return that from a property in your view model and then render that in your stash template. This is more thoroughly shown in an example that Justin made for the original proposal, which is kind of replacing that bitballs example that we had earlier. In your main app view, you could have a page component promise that returns the component. So let's actually get into that logic a little bit. So here I have a property in my view model, page component promise, that returns either returns a new login page, and again this is just the components constructor function, or to get progressive loading, I can import the page, and then once I have that, then I can return a new instance of whatever component is required to render the page. So now, instead of having that huge switch statement that's hard to test in your stash template, you just have this in your view model, and it makes it way easier to test. And then you can just render the promise value in your template. And I think that's it. Any questions or comments?
Very cool.
Sweet.
Awesome.
That was a super long demo. Sorry. Hopefully it wasn't too boring.
For
But
DoneJS 6.0, I really want to make the window available on the scope in Stash. I want to do that. I really want to do that thing where you can do this dot, and then so you can do JSON stringify and just call that straight away in Stash template without having to do anything. I don't know. So because that reason part that you showed, that the reason why that's what brought it up is because you're like, oh, I'm going to log the reason for the error, but you just put it out there as if it was a string, where really you'd want to have to convert that to JSON or something. But you can't unless you provide JSON stringify to the scope.
yeah, I feel like I'd still want that in my view model, so I could test that instead of having to test that errors are rendered correctly in a stash template. But I hear what you're saying.
I just think there's a lot of times there's a million functions now in the window that I've wanted to call.
Useful to have. Yeah,
or object.keys or something. You just want to print out the keys on something. Well, you can't. Too bad.
Yeah. Cool. That's all I had. Austin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Mine's not as extensive as the other ones, but that's okay. I've only been here 2 weeks so far, and my grand contribution has been adding usestrip to all of our JS files in CanJS, excluding the test files.
Could you bump up the text size on the pages that you're looking at?
Yeah, let me see.
Thanks. Command plus is your...
It's opposite.
You can also probably
I don't
just
think it's enabled in my... There we go. I think that's as good as it's going to get right now.
There's always the hamburger menu, or the little triple dot menu. That allows you to do it as well in the top right corner of your browser.
There we go. I'm still new at Macs. I haven't been using them very often, so.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
Yeah. So, anyways, my task was to add strict mode to all of our JS files. So, all I did is created this fancy piece of code here using JS code shift, and all it does is go through all of the repos, looks for JS files and adds use strict to the top. And I did that using Landscaper.
Wait, can you go back to that?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a JS code unshift?
Down here, this unshift.
I've been drinking.
Terrible. Terrible.
The raspberries are getting to you, Justin.
Didn't even know you were joking. Something I was.
I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so JS code unshift to put ustrict up at the top of all our JS files, just like this one here in can Ajax. So nothing fancy, but it got added to all the dependencies in CanJS. And then I spent the rest of the 2 weeks just fixing all the problems that caused and getting everything to play nicely together, which it now has, thanks to everyone helping me as well, Kevin, Jason, and Christopher. So yeah, and that's really it. That's what I've been doing.
Do you have any idea how many files you added that to in a week?
Oh, geez. Well, how many dependencies are in CanJS? Like
80?
I remember there was 75 PRs.
That's right. There's 75 PRs, and each one had, like, I would say on average 2 or 3 JS files. So, you know, close to 200. It was a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's basically what I've been doing and learning the ropes and everything. But that's been my contribution for these last couple of weeks.
Sweet. Thanks, Austin.
Yeah.
Sheriff, did you want to talk about what you've been working on? If Sheriff's around.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey.
So, you see my screen?
We see your face, and
Okay.
we still see your face.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Good. So I was working the last week on the task for removing CanUtil stuff from CanJS packages. So the first thing is to remove the can namespace from CanUtil. So now it doesn't export the can namespace in the packages, and a bunch of packages were replaced. And here I listed the most of changes I did on several modules. So, for example, we can see that CanUtil GSHH module was replaced by CanReflect HK function, and this function is good for objects and is performant. But for lists, we can use CanReflect each. And for the CanUtil is promise is replaced with CanReflect is promise. Now we are in the CanReflect group replacements. And for make array, we can just, now we are using the toArray function. So for empty object, and this module is in CanUtil, is replaced also by function in the CanReflect package, which is the size function, and simply we can replace this module with this statement to check if the size equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, so the object is empty. The same thing for the isPlain object module, which is replaced also with the function in CanReflect isPlain object. For the dip_assign module, also replaced with the function which is assign dip in CanReflect module always. And now for CID map, I replaced it with CanCID map module, and the same thing for CID set, which now have or has the special module, which is the CanCID set. But for can util DOM dispatch is replaced with the dispatch function in the can DOM events module. So, but the use is a little bit changed. Instead of doing the call and passing the object and as a context and the argument of the event type, we can just invoke the dispatch function in the DOM object model and passes the target, which is the element or the DOM element, like input here, and the event type, which is the input event. And the can util assign also has a separate module, which is can assign, and we now is used in this version of CanJS. This is just a list all
so
the.
Where should someone use can assign versus can reflex assign, Matt?
Can assign is for object literals.
Well, both will work for object literals. That was just a prompt myself to answer in some ways. You use can assign is going to be much faster, and it only works on object literals, but it's going to be much faster for object literals because can reflect is all that feature detection, looking for symbols and things like that. So use can assign when you need the performance. Generally speaking, I use can reflect assign map to, like, if I'm extending a type or something that's just going to happen once, but anything kind of inside of a function that's going to run a bunch of times, I'll use can assign if I know I'm dealing with plain objects.
Okay. So for the can util JS get now is replaced by the can key get, the module get in the can key, and also for the can util diff object is replaced by the module can diff, which have submodules like can diff map, which is used for objects or maps, and can diff list is for list of objects or a list of maps. And we can also find can diff deep for to have a diff for nested objects or nested lists. Okay, and what I observed in this replacement that there is a property changed. For example, for the can util diff object, in the diff we can have the property key. Now the diff generated by can diff, instead of the property key, we can have another key named key, like I said, like is written here. So this change took me some time to figure out what was changed, and the tests were failing, but at last I found where is the change. So for the can util string is replaced by can string. However, for the function string sub is replaced in another module, which is can key. We can find the sub function, the old sub function in the can util string in the can key sub module. Is it clear?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sheriff. And I can't remember if we've a good next step would be to document all of these in can utils package. I know we've documented some of them, but we've definitely added a lot more packages in the last month or two.
I opened an issue this morning about this.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I made a link to I put a link. There is the issue. The gist contains the replacement for can util modules. It would be great if the docs can list all the remaining modules in this section, which is the section of the deprecated functions and modules in CanUtil. And here is the link to this gist. It can be useful. Okay.
Sweet.
Okay. So for CanUtil string to any is replaced by constring to the module constring to any. So yes, we now is just to make a short listing for the replacement, and for maybe the users can see the document, the docs, to see how these APIs are used. For the CanUtil dev is replaced by can log, the submodule can log dev, and for global now we have can globals global. Also, for the shade nodes, we have now the can shade nodes module as a replacement. Okay, and for CanUtil import, now we have is replaced by the can import module, and the same thing for the CanUtil fragment, which has its own module now, which is can fragment. And for the old can DOM frag is the same thing as fragment, and we can just import it like this to replace it without do any change in the code. That's all the replacement I did in this task or in this issue. Also, in the week before, I finished the Webpack issue. For example, we can show to the user how this was released. For example, if we see this code, for Webpack users in the production build, they can see also this part, which is wrapped in the comment in start remove start and still remove end. Now, by changing this to sample wrapping, for I'm not good at remembering the things. I think I can't remember.
It's process.m.
Process.env.
.node.env.
.node.env.
Yeah, capital node env.
Yes.
No, it's env. I'm pretty sure it's env.node.env.
It's okay. It doesn't matter.
Sure, if you did all these, how do you not remember it?
Copy paste, man.
Yeah, maybe copy paste, and I'm not used to remember stuff like this, so.
But the point is, you wrap it, and then Webpack knows to remove those pieces of code.
What?
I was just explaining that Webpack knows to remove those blocks of code.
It's crazy. It's not even like Webpack, right? Because Webpack is a replacement of, it just finds process end, node end, and replaces it with like
a string,
and then it's uglify or one of the minifiers that says, well, a string is equal to string. We know if it's taking the string or not. Let's remove this dead code.
The replacement here, because this module is already shipped. So, for example,
yeah, there it is.
So if it's like if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? If dead code is written but it's dead code eliminated, is it ever executed? I guess no. Never mind.
It's not. I think that provides the solutions.
It does answer the question.
Yeah.
I I really wish that Steele's style of commenting had caught on with other bundlers, because looking at some of the changes Sheriff had to make, like you actually have to refactor code, because with the way Steele does it with comments, you can actually have an argument that gets removed, an argument to a function.
It can do things that
your
version cannot do.
Yeah. Well, you can do it. You just have to actually refactor your code, which is weird.
Yeah. I guess the good thing about the other, to give a little bit of credence the other way, is at least that's kind of valid-ish JavaScript. You could put that remove n in the wrong spot and just totally break JavaScript syntax.
Sure.
It's just easier to remove this way, right? The AST is just deleting one node instead of multiple.
Are you talking about the Webpack way?
Yeah, with the comment way, the AST, there's a comment node, then there's a bunch of stuff inside, and then there's another comment node.
Oh, if you're doing comment based, we do it regular expression.
Yeah, we do regex. I think that's one problem is I've heard from other people is that I think ASTs just don't do comments that well. They're not really. They're kind of weird in ASTs, I believe. So
I think they've
harder to do.
better, but Esprima for sure had. I think they added it after a while, comments, but it wasn't there originally for sure.
And I have to say, we keep on saying Webpack, but Steele 1 also has the Envify option that you can opt into the same behavior, and then that's going to be the default for Steele 2. So a little shout out for Steele. Cool. Okay. Was that it, Sheriff? Yeah, sweet. I'm glad all of this got released as part of 4.3.2. It's like an automatic win if you're using another bundler that isn't Steele. So
yeah, the set name is the slowest performing part typically of a CameraFlex set name is the slowest performing part of a a non-production application, which doesn't even happen at all in production.
Yeah. Cool. Christopher, did you have a demo for us?
I do. I have two, actually. So they should be both pretty short.
All right. Sounds good.
So first was just a quick thing I did 2 weeks ago, I think. I made a change to done serve so that you get directory listings instead of just straight error messages when you try to pull up a directory. This is something that I've been wanting for a while, and then I noticed a couple other people, so I went ahead and just made it work.
That's awesome.
And as promised in our last meeting, I've been working on Ilum. So the first thing that I added was this derive updates configuration function. What this allows you to do is, as props come into your Ilum components, you can rewrite the way they get applied to your view model. So in this particular instance right here, the props variable is turned into an object with props in it. So what that does is on your view model, it's at viewModel.props, or on your store, sorry. On your store, it's store.props instead of just the store itself. That can make it a little cleaner if you have lots of derived properties and you don't ever want them to mess with the originals. You have them kind of in a different place. But the main reason we added this is because we've added several deriving functions that you can use, and there's 3 of them that are built in. So if you want to make a controlled component, we've exported a function that gives you that exact same behavior. It just always uses the new props no matter what. If you want an uncontrolled component, again, that function exists as well. It uses your initial props, and then it doesn't do any more updates, since that's just how controlled components work. And then we added a third option, which is the default behavior, which does a diff of the new props and the old props, and any changes get merged into your store. So that last one seemed to be because we're in like an observable, which is a little different than the normal React way, this one seemed to be the best option.
Christopher, if you're not using the all of can diff, you can import straight from the modules to save a little bit of size there, because there's some other stuff like merge deep, and it's just probably not worth bringing in.
I am using merge deep in actually the next part I'm talking about, so I'm using both merge deep and map.
Yeah, still there's other. I mean, I would typically just pull in what you need unless you actually know you're using all of it.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I can switch that up just a little smaller, hopefully. So this is the first part, was this derive updates option that we added. And then the other one is a little more technical, but I still think very useful. It is here. So whenever a store needs to be updated with new props from React, previously we were just replacing and letting the observable do what it does, and it was causing some weird, not issues, just unexpected behaviors. So we implemented a diff so that the props that are merged in, the props that are, which in this case is the props returned from the derive updates function, it does a diff on those and merges those into the store instead of just replacing. So you get a much cleaner update path that only updates the specific values that need changing, which should give you some performance increases. There's not really a demo for this one. It's just an internal change. So that's what I got.
Sweet. Thank you. I think that's after an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's it for demos. We're over time. Is there anything?
I didn't demo. Yeah.
Oh, Kevin, I'm sorry.
Sadly, it's not.
It's not the end. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you out.
No problem. Yeah. So if anyone's made it this far in the video, if you're out there and you want all the awesome new features of 4.3 and 5.0, but your app is still on 3.0, I've got the thing for you. Let me share my screen. So what I've been working on is a training and presentation about upgrading to CanJS 4.0. So now in the CanJS 4 migration guide, there's this link for the upgrade presentation. To go onto that, and this is a Google Slides embedded in here that walks you through the upgrade process, all the things that you might need to change in your app to upgrade to 4.0, and then talks through some of the new features. A lot of the stuff we've talked about already. So I'll kind of go through this real quick. So first, it goes through the process. There's some videos where I'm actually going through and upgrading the CanJS chat app, and then the rest of these steps, and then you're done. And then it walks through all of the things that you might need to change. So it walks through each change that you might need to make in your app to upgrade to 4.0. So it gives you the diffs for all these things, and then it also gives you these little emoji guys telling you whether or not this one means that there's a code mod that does this for you. If you see one of these keyboard ones, that means you got to type it yourself. And then after it goes through all this stuff, 90 slides later, at the end here, I walk through all of the new stuff in CanJS 4.0 that you get once you do the upgrade. So it walks through the simpler component setup that we added in 4.0. It walks through can observe, a lot of this stuff. It talks about the streaming property definitions with can defines value, this value observable, and then it goes through a lot of debugging and dev tools. So it talks about dev tools, installing it, gives some pretty pictures here of using dev tools and the graph and all of these things. So that's it. That's basically that. If anyone is out there and is still watching and is interested in seeing a YouTube video of this entire presentation, let us know. That's something that we talked about, maybe doing, recording and putting that out there. So that's it.
Sweet. Thanks for closing us out, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem.
Did anyone have any topics that they needed to discuss before we go?
Yeah, I have a big one.
I guess I just want to say I'm really happy with our effort for 5.0. I just looked it up, and 4.0 was released on February 1st. So we had February, March, April, May, June. In 5 months, we got another major release out. That's the fastest major release turnover that that we've ever done. And I would say it's good that we're really, I mean, in some ways, I'd like to even be faster, because to upgrade from 3 to 4 took a little bit, but the upgrade from 4 to 5 is almost nothing. And if we can give people these more incremental steps to upgrade through, I think that's a lot better for projects. You know, it's much easier to just upgrade one little thing every couple months than upgrade a whole bunch of things, you know, once a year or something like that.
That's kind of the promise of CanJS 3.0, right? Is that we split everything into individual packages. We're like, hey, we can make major versions and you don't have to update anything. And then 4.0 happened and that didn't work, but it happened this time.
This time it did, you're right, because you can use all of the new stuff that, all of the new instantiating components and things like that in 4.0 without having to upgrade to 5.0, because 5.0 upgrade is really just the model layer and this one little can-route push state change.
Yeah, and a bunch of the packages are the same versions between the two. So like there wasn't a new major version of can component or can stash or a lot of the like underlying libraries. So yeah.
So yay, we did it.
Yeah, go team.
We did it. Go team.
Cool. I think that's it. We will be back with a special edition of our stream on next Friday to talk about the new proposals for our next survey. We'll be going out next week, and then we'll be back for our regularly scheduled DoneJS contributors meeting in 2 weeks to go over the survey results and demo what we've been working on in the next 2 weeks that are about to happen. So everyone who's watching, thank you for watching. Let us know what you think about our new releases. We'd love the feedback, and see you guys next week / 2 weeks. Bye.
Download CanJS 5.
Yeah, try it out.